In 2020 I made a video about my new purchase, an Atomos Ninja V. I bought it during lockdown with the plan to record some game clips with it, without needing a powerful second PC. It's around 2.5 years since I made that video, and things have changed, so it's time to revisit the Ninja and my setup. Last year in 2022, I replaced the Samsung 4K TV I used at the time with a new 42-inch LG C2 4K TV with 120Hz refresh rate. This works great as a monitor, and the increased refresh rate is a big bonus in normal use and in games. Unfortunately, the 120Hz refresh rate is completely incompatible with my previous setup. The StarTech HDMI splitter only supported 60Hz, so unless I wanted to cripple the new TV, I had to disconnect it along with the Atomos Ninja. When I eventually got around to fixing the problem some 7 months later, I decided on a new HDMI splitter that boasted 8K 60Hz and 4K 120Hz support. This means that I can leave the splitter in place permanently without crippling the TV. The splitter I chose was the ESCU EZ SP12H28S. This handles the 120Hz absolutely fine, along with supporting G-Sync and FreeSync on the TV. It provides duplication and also allows for downscaling of the second output to 1080p with the same refresh rate as the source. As far as recording with the Ninja V goes, it isn't a perfect solution. The Ninja V only supports 60Hz, so I have to change the refresh rate for recording. I don't really fancy the £700 it would cost for a Ninja V Plus, and I couldn't upload the 120fps video afterwards anyway. If I can find a device that takes the 120Hz signal and converts it to 60Hz, I'll get that. In the meantime, I can also record in 1080p at 120fps by sliding the downscaling switch I mentioned previously. The Ninja quite happily managed 1080p 120, and I'll show that later. It's a shame that my Nikon Z9 mirrorless camera doesn't have any kind of video input, as that's capable of recording 4K 120fps and even 8K 60fps video. Someone needs to invent a tiny 4K screen that clips on like a lens. At this point I can record things just as I did previously. In an older edit of this video I then went on to talk about how I could now record in HDR, but I don't think that's really the case. I'll go through the settings I'm using and then you can judge if this is actually HDR or if it's just standard definition in disguise. The new splitter appears to handle HDR fine, and the Atomos Ninja V detects it as HDR. I recently built a new PC and the new HDR options in Windows 11 actually help in this respect. They handle HDR much better in everyday use, and even the new Auto HDR setting provides a benefit in non-HDR games. As with the previous splitter, there was some fiddling and a fair amount of swearing required to get this device to perform as I wanted it to. While it worked with the TV out of the box, I couldn't initially get any picture on the Ninja in 4K or 1080p. The first solution I found was to turn off HDR in Windows, however that isn't very useful to me. The second solution was to change the colour settings of my RTX 3080 in the NVIDIA control panel, changing the output colour depth to 8-bit rather than 10-bit or above. This is the first red flag when it comes to proper HDR, as that should be at least 10-bit. And the problems continued. When running a game, the output to the Ninja was very unreliable, constantly dropping out, especially when going between gameplay and menus. I was about ready to throw in the towel, shove the thing back in the box and send it back as faulty, but while going through the settings I disabled the G-Sync option. Once disabled, the problem just went away. I use V-Sync on my game, so I didn't even notice any difference. As far as I can tell, it's just as good. G-Sync can be enabled when I'm not recording. At the moment I just have to turn it on when I'm in 60Hz and recording with the Ninja. Changing the display settings would be a complete pain if I had to do this manually, but thankfully I purchased Display Fusion many years ago, so I can set up profiles for refresh rate and colour depth. Those are assigned to buttons on my Stream Deck, so I can conveniently switch between them. This doesn't handle G-Sync settings, but that's less of a concern for me. The final issue I came across was specifically related to my LG C2 television. When put on standby, this TV seems to disconnect from the PC, and the PC no longer sees it as a connected device. Before I purchased the splitter, this only manifested itself as applications being resized to 640 by 480 if they weren't in full screen. It's annoying, but it was only a minor inconvenience. Since installing the splitter, the signal was being lost completely, and I had to unplug the HDMI input cable from the splitter to get it to wake back up. I think I've resolved this now by activating the Always Ready feature on the TV. I'm now going to talk about the video settings I'm using for capture and output, something I didn't mention in my old video. The settings I'm using on the Ninja V are what it detected itself in HDR auto mode. That's Rec 2100 with PQ gamma and BT 2020 gamma. There are no other changes to the recording on the Ninja. It uses approximately the same amount of disk space as it did before. Since the last video, I upgraded to a 1TB Samsung 860 EVO SSD. In ProRes LT, I can get a whopping 2 hours of footage on it. I'm using Adobe Premiere Pro 23.2 to edit the footage, and it handles the ProRes video very well in what it thinks is HDR. The previews appear with washed out colours, but once exported, the colours are back to normal. I still don't use proxies for my editing, as I've found those actually perform worse than the raw files in this case, and you can hate me for that in the comments. For video export, I'm using the settings shown on the screen and H.265. Although I'm still not sure if this is proper HDR, I have to export it as if it is, and that includes ticking the HDR10 metadata box. I've uploaded some trial videos with and without this box ticked, and there is a difference on YouTube. Unfortunately, this isn't supported for hardware rendering, so it takes much longer in software rendering. I'm looking for alternatives, but right now this is the best I have and it looks accurate to me. Earlier on in the video, I mentioned that the switch on the splitter allows it to output 1080p 120 frames a second and that the Ninja V can record at this frame rate. Well, here are some demonstrations. You wouldn't be able to notice the frame rate increase at normal speed, so they're all slowed down to half speed. The 1080p quality is acceptable and it uses significantly less disk space. Just keep in mind that this is an upscale version to 4K and won't be entirely accurate. I'll upload these clips in 1080p and link to that video below. And there we go, an update on recording with the Atomos Ninja V. If I buy a Ninja V Plus, I'll make another follow-up, otherwise this is probably the last video I'll make on the Atomos device. I was interested in their Atomx cast device that accepts multiple inputs and functions a bit like the Blackmagic Design A10 Mini, however the cast only accepts 1080p inputs and doesn't allow them to be overlaid over the standard 4K input on the Ninja. That's quite disappointing for me, as that would have been a nice feature. As I've upgraded my main PC, I now have a more powerful second PC next to me that could probably capture 4K footage with a card like the Elgato 4K60 Pro and overlay a single 1080p source from my older AverMedia Live Gamer Extreme. I'll leave you with some footage I recorded of Aperture Desk Job that I was going to put into this video, however something went a bit wrong with the game. I've no idea why it did this, but I promise you this is exactly what happened and I haven't edited the footage. Take care and thanks for watching.
Let's get started. Look at all those to change the world, stretching off in the distance. To you. Every one of them will remember what you do here today. Who's going to use it to change the world. Congratulations by us, all of us, all of humanity, science adventure at the greatest applied sciences company on Earth. This is important work, and you are just the genius to do it. God gave you these gifts. I'm giving you the opportunity to use them. Well, here's your lab. I don't mind telling you, we're excited up here.
That's
Moon landing excited.
I think I put the wrong tape in. Hold on.
Good luck. Now you. World's best science.
Okay, here we go.
You, in the overalls. Get to work, or you're fired.